I clicked rename the folder instead of clicked give it to you guys. So let me do that again. Okay. Okay, I'm sending the folder around, and you guys should be all getting it. And if you don't, maybe ask Star or Blue. I bet they would. Well, probably Star. Sorry, I know Blue will be helpful too. But anyways, in that folder is, I knew you would. In that folder is my reference links, which is mostly the academic kind of stuff. Gamergate specific links, I kind of separated that out so it wasn't all just in my research stuff. Definitions that we're going to go over, and both the Google links for both presentations. So I did a presentation about 4 weeks ago here called Gamergate, or no, blah, blah, blah. I did a presentation 4 weeks ago called Virtually Real, the Effects of Gaming and Gamer Culture. And that is here. So this was the one I did 4 weeks ago. This is the next link I'm going to post in local is if you want to follow along tonight, if you can't see my slides, and if it would be easier for you to follow along in a browser. So, but that's also in a note card in case you want to refer back to it. Okay, now we're going to get rolling. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was what is video game culture? And it's considered to be a subculture because it's marked by having certain tastes. And it is considered kind of its own sort of form of art. So, and then from an academic perspective, it's still largely being studied. There are a few studies out there about gamer culture, but oftentimes they don't come at it from a cultural perspective. When they study games, they come at it more from a what are the effects of the game on an individual, and less kind of what is the whole. So, and people often think of game culture or gamer culture in terms of stereotypes, and when we think of a stereotypical gamer, often what comes to mind is a teenage boy, you know, a teenage boy playing Call of Duty or, you know, something like that. And statistics don't really back up that that's really who plays games. I mean, teenage boys do play games, but they're not the only people who play games. And I kind of covered that in my lecture, so I'm not going to dive straight into that. The other thing is that first generation gamers, so people that were playing like Atari and even the first instances of Nintendo, those people are approaching middle age. So people who have been lifelong gamers are approaching middle age. So that's changing the dynamic as well. And then there's just a quote at the bottom. Digital gaming is a multifaceted social and cultural phenomenon which can be understood, practiced, and used in various ways. So academic institutions are kind of starting to look more into gamer culture because it does have a really widespread impact, but it's still kind of gaining its legs, I'd say. So why would we want to think critically about gaming and gamer culture? Because about 60% of Americans play video games, and so over half of Americans play video games. So over half of Americans are involved in gaming culture. And the other thing is a recent survey, I think this might have been 2008. So these numbers could have changed a little bit, but a recent survey found that 97% of children play games, and that was 99% of boys and 94% of girls. So since all these people are part of this culture, looking at it critically gives us a chance to improve it. Okay. And I'm just going to go through definitions. So these are just a few definitions because they're not like commonly used words. One thing I'm going to talk about when I talk about Gamergate is Kotaku. And I'm not even sure I said that right, but it's a gaming news website. It has a lot of game articles and things like that, gaming articles and that sort of thing. The other thing is doxing or doxing XX is the internet-based practice of researching and broadcasting individuals' personally identifying information. So their address, their real name, things like that. Basically, you're putting that in a place where it can be publicly accessed and used against the person. And then a trope. The word trope has also come to be used for describing commonly recurring literary and rhetorical devices, motifs, or cliches in creative works. So basically using, like the damsel in distress, that's a trope. I just kind of wanted to make that clear before we kind of get into this discussion. So, and then there's one more thing we got to do before we talk about Gamergate. Before we discuss Gamergate, I just wanted to bring up that if I made a death threat to you, like a mean death threat to you in real life, you could hold me accountable legally for that. Like, there would be consequences for that. Many of the women that got death and rape threats in the slew of craziness that was Gamergate, all they did was speak out against how the media that is video games. All they did was speak out critically against it, and they were driven from their homes. There were horrible threats, and we'll kind of go into that in a minute. So, to me, at some point, it becomes irrelevant whether Gamergate was about ethics in journalism or not. You know, these women are being threatened and grossly threatened, and everybody's kind of discounting it because it's on the internet. I don't think because it's on the internet you get away scot-free. So I want us to keep that in mind as we go in and think about this, and just kind of frame this discussion that way. Like, I don't think you get off scot-free when you say you're going to kill someone or that you wish someone dead, whether it's on the internet or in real life. So, okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, so the effects of game culture, and Gamergate has kind of been referred to as the future of culture wars, just because we've never seen something quite like this. And so I'm actually going to go into how it started and kind of bits of the timeline of what happened, because I've noticed, I've heard a lot of talk about it in probably the last 3 months, especially on the porch. Occasionally I've heard people bring up like, oh, well, this is what Gamergate is, or this is what Gamergate is. You know, Gamergate is Anita Sarkeesian. Gamergate is Brianna Wu. Gamergate is just gamers being jerks, things like that. But there was kind of a timeline of events of what happened. So it started with Aaron Gioni. He makes a blog, basically kind of this expose blog about his ex-girlfriend Zoe Quinn. And Zoe Quinn is an indie games developer. And he basically says that she cheated on him with all these people. He shares personal chat logs. And he claims she had sex with someone who was a journalist, and specifically a gaming journalist. And his name was Nathan Grayson. And at the time, I think Grayson was writing for Kotaku, which is a games news site. So that's why I mentioned Kotaku. So, and it turned out that Nathan Grayson did actually write a review, or at least her game was mentioned in a review he wrote, but the review he wrote was about Steam Greenlight, and it was a program where, I don't know if you guys are at all familiar with Steam, but Steam is like a place where you can buy games and things like that. But it was where indie game developers submitted their indie games and hoped that they could get spotlight on their indie games. So he was reviewing that, and I'm not as familiar with Steam, I'll admit that. I'm a console player. But he was reviewing the Steam Greenlight, and her game was mentioned. And it's like 2 words about her game. It's not this in-depth review. So, and he just mentions her game at the end of the article. And it was a nice couple words, but it was by no means like, I mean, if you guys get Game Informer or read kind of reviews on websites, like there are lengthy reviews of games, and some of them are glowing and some of them are not so glowing. That was not what happened. And the other thing was, and I think I actually had this, I was going to cover this later in the talk, but basically, when the timeline all shook out, it turned out that like whatever relationship happened with Grayson and Quinn happened several months after he had written this review. So it wasn't, whatever Gioni was accusing her of wasn't true. But that's kind of where the ethics in gaming journalism came from, is that it was purported that, you know, Zoe Quinn slept with this guy for a good review. And then the timeline came out and that it was not at all true. So that's where ethics in gaming journalism came from, and that's kind of why it became Gamergate. So because of this, Zoe Quinn suffered a ton of harassment, including death and rape threats. And Gioni also claimed that, I think it was 4chan just randomly found his post, But it sounds like that's not the case either, that he actually has added a lot of fuel to the fire. He's encouraged people to harass her, things like that. So, and since he's kind of backpedaled and admitted that there was no relationship between Grayson and Quinn, and I kind of mentioned that, like even he's backpedaled, the guy who originally, exposed all this information. And also during this time, Gioni admits to the fact that when he's accusing her of sleeping with this other guy, they were on a break. They weren't even together. So it's kind of this huge mess. And like, I couldn't even read all the information because it's like, there's his blog, there's several blogs like sharing what he said on Twitter, what he said on 4chan, what he said on Reddit, like to encourage people to harass her. Like it is a massive amount of information. So, and the other thing is Nathan Grayson, the journalist who's kind of at the heart of this controversy, he hasn't suffered the same amount of harassment that Zoe Quinn has, like by any means. So the journalist who they're accusing of taking favors isn't really getting the same amount of harassment that Zoe is, which was kind of interesting. And I will cover that in my next slide a little bit. Oh, not my next slide, 2 slides down. Sorry. I'm gonna go over some of the figures in Gamergate and how they got involved first, and then we'll kind of go over the issues with harassment on Twitter. So Anita Sarkeesian, I'm sure you guys have heard of Anita because she's kind of been a hot topic. So while Gamergate was gaining steam, she was releasing her Tropes versus Women video series, which she funded through Kickstarter. And she specifically talks about like the sexualization of women in video games and women used as props in video games or objects. And so because she's outspoken, she subsequently becomes a target in Gamergate. And it ends up driving her from her home, I think, in September. And there's also an issue at a university that I'll talk about in a minute. Sorry, this is more of a spider web and less of a straight timeline because it's kind of a complicated thing. The other thing is, so the next person is Brianna Wu. She's an indie games developer, and she was just incredibly outspoken during Gamergate. She didn't back down, and she was also driven from her home due to threats. And in the links I provided for Gamergate specifically, there was a guy who on YouTube actually claims that Brianna Wu attempted to assassinate him while he was street racing on icy roads in his mother's Prius, and that she somehow messed with his mother's car to silence him. Like that's kind of the worst of the worst, but it is pretty disturbing, like the accusations that are thrown out. Lee Alexander, she is an editor and writer for Gamasutra, a site about gaming, and she just wrote a piece called "Gamers Don't Have to Be Your Audience, Gamers Are Over," and she was kind of talking about gamer gatekeeping and saying, gamers who call themselves gamers and say, no, you have to play A, B, C, and D to be a gamer, they're over. And gamer gatekeeping is over. So just write your articles for everyone. And that was published in August of 2014. And that's kind of how she got involved in this whole thing. Stephen Totilo, excuse me. I think I might have spelled that wrong. I think it is Totilo. He was Grayson's editor at Kotaku, and he backed up Nathan against the allegations. And if you look in those links I give you again, it has screenshots of the Twitter feed that when he was basically addressing this whole mess. And then Adam Baldwin, I just had to mention because he actually coined the term, Gamergate on Twitter while he was fighting with Brianna Wu. And I love Adam Baldwin. He was in Firefly and Chuck, but he's not always the nicest person on Twitter. And he was not very nice to Brianna Wu at all. So I enjoyed him, I guess I should say, in his acting pursuits. So, ethics in journalism or harassment of women in gaming. So this is a chart that shows how many tweets between September 1st and October 25th of 2014 these people received with the hashtag Gamergate to kind of give you a good idea of how little Totilo and Grayson got. Even if you added the two men who were kind of involved in this, even if you added all the tweets together, it's still barely a quarter of the tweets that Zoe Quinn got. Barely a quarter. And Anita Sarkeesian got, I mean, I can read off the numbers, they're there as well, but Anita gets like 35,000 tweets. Brianna gets 38,000 tweets. Kotaku did get a good amount of tweets as well. I didn't actually have the number for that, but you can see in the chart that it was many tweets. But Zoe gets about 10,000 and Lee gets about 13,000. So, yeah, that kind of shows you how slanted it is and how kind of sad that is. And these are not often friendly tweets. And we'll kind of go into that. So I'm going to talk about Anita specifically because Anita kind of does have a dog in this fight because of her work to, to think critically about gaming. So she's faced endless harassment, kind of enough that she actually disabled comments on her YouTube videos because she just got sick of it. And there are claims that she's a fraud and that she's a professional victim and that she took all the money she made from Kickstarter and she buys nice things with it and all that sort of thing. So I am the first to admit, and those of you who have asked me about this before know that I'm the first to admit that Anita Sarkeesian, some of her arguments have flaws, and sometimes she uses the worst possible example for her argument. But discounting her arguments completely because she has a flaw here or there, or because she uses the worst possible example, I would say is a logical fallacy. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And as I watch her videos, a lot of the stuff she's talking about was stuff that I talked about last week. She's not just pulling it out of the thin air. She is looking at academic studies. She is looking at current research on these subjects and what effects they're having. She's not just stating her opinion. So I'm sure to some extent she is stating her opinion, but that's not all she's doing. So, I don't think I'm stating her opinion, but that's okay. Many of her detractors just mostly have hearsay evidence.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you just said.
Yeah, there's some gesture going on that I can't.
Actually, that's why I couldn't hear you, because I'm looking for it.
Okay.
I see
that
it.
was very
Persona.
rude, whoever did it.
It was.
Please don't do it again, so I don't have to find you and spank you.
I didn't say that I was using her data. I said that through watching her videos, I've seen that some of her data is the same as some of the data I've seen from various, papers and research studies. I didn't take her data.
Savory, can you stop, please? That's pretty rude. Thanks.
Did you get the Savoy? Did you get the source links? Okay. If you click the thing that says lecture materials next to me, it's right in there, and I have materials from the last talk too, if you want, and I can give that to you after the talk. I'm just gonna wait until we get a chance to find whoever's.
Let her have her talk. We will have questions for later. Just let it go.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm okay. I was just waiting for the gestures to stop because it's distracting. So,
I'm thinking maybe we start playing baseball. This is like strike one.
On that one? No, I'd say strike 1, 2, and 3.
Well,
I say shun the non-open-minded person. See, I'm here to try to listen to her talk, even though I'm a Scarcesian detract her because of my own reasons. So I'm going to stay off the mic now.
Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm going to keep going. My feeling is that in a lot of ways, Sarkeesian is just advocating for representation and inclusion. She wants representation of women in video games to change, and she wants it to be a more inclusive environment for women. Whether or not I agree with how she's going about it. And because of what she does, she gets a ton of harassment. Like, I'm not going to read the tweets because they're kind of vulgar, but there are horrible tweets, and she has a link for that. Somebody's still got their mic on.
Please turn your mic off.
Thank you.
Oh, my mic's on. Sorry, I forgot to turn it off.
That's okay.
My bad.
You're good. I was just hearing that electronic hum, so it's a little distracting. But there is a link in the references just to kind of, she posted a week's worth of tweets that she gets. And it's really scary what she gets in just a week. So, and that is in the references, that's not in the Gamergate links. Okay. This kind of, the issue with Sarkeesian kind of came to a head when she went to talk at Utah State University. And those of you who know me, I'm actually from Utah, and I actually went to, not Utah State University, I went to University of Utah. But when this happened, it hit really close to home for me, because like I could have, if I was a college kid, I would have been involved on that campus. You know, that was scary. But basically there was an email sent to Utah State University threatening that if they allowed her to speak, there would be a massacre that would rival the Montreal Massacre of 1989, which was a man named Mark Lapine shot 28 people and killed 14 women in the name of fighting feminism. And due to Utah's gun laws, which Utah is a open carry state, so the law enforcement basically said they had no way of stopping guns from being on campus or being in the auditorium, that they couldn't do, you know, like a metal detector or a weapons check or anything like that. And it's a state-funded school, so I don't know if that was so much sexism or just, you know, I live in the wild, wild west. Like, the gun laws are pretty lax here, and it's really easy to get a gun in Utah. So, and the FBI has also started, you know, the FBI is investigating that, as well as some of the other threats against Sarkeesian. So, and the guy who sent the email specifically, guy or girl, we don't know. So, I'm an equal opportunity, people are evil. They did specifically mention Gamergate in that, like they specifically mentioned Gamergate in their threatening email. So, they claimed affiliation. It's kind of a grassroots movement, so I don't think you can say like everyone's affiliated, but it was interesting that that was mentioned. Okay, so I just want to talk about the culture of harassment. Now, anybody who plays online games has probably endured their fair share of shit talking. Guys do it to guys. I'd say girls do it to girls. Girls do it to guys. Guys do it to girls. Like, it happens to everyone. It is not a gender-only thing. But recently the Pew Research Center did a study on internet users getting harassed. So this was just internet users. And they said about 40% of people say that they have experienced some form of internet harassment. And of that, 18% said it was a more severe form. 22% said it was a less severe form. So men and women get harassed kind of for different reasons. If you can see in this chart, kind of the one with the blue bar graph, and I'm actually going to pull that up on my screen as well so that I can see it a little bit better. So a lot of people have been called offensive names. More men have been called offensive names than women. It was 32 to 22 percentage wise. Purposely embarrassed, 24 to 20. Physically threatened, 10 to 6. Harassed for a sustained period, 8 to 7. And then stalked, that's where it kind of flip-flops, and women are more likely to be stalked, 6 to 9, sexually harassed, 4 to 7. So we all experience harassment, we just kind of experience different kinds. And then another recent study found that a lot of gamers do think that sexism is prominent in the community. Now let me frame this survey for you real quick. This was broadcast again across some gaming sites, across the Facebook site, sorry. People had to go and take this survey, so it could be a little slanted because they had to go and seek the survey out and take it. They had to be interested enough to take the survey. But the survey found that about, what did I write down? Sorry. 80% of men and women surveyed believed that sexism was prominent in gaming. And of that, women were 63% likely to, or 63% of the women who answered the survey said that they had been taunted or harassed, and most of what they felt they had been harassed with was sexual harassment. And men also said they had been sexually harassed, but it was only about 6% of men. And women, when they were saying they were sexually harassed, they said that they were either like called, okay, I'm going to use some naughty words here, so if you've got virgin ears, you can plug your ears for a second. But cunt, slut, whore, bitch, those sorts of things. The men said that when they were sexually harassed, they were usually called something like, again, naughty words coming, fag, or pussy, or something, derogatory, and something non-masculine, generally. So. And then the other thing was, I agree, that is why the mute button is, we'll actually get to why the mute button or the block button was created. The other thing is, have you ever obscured your sex to avoid harassment? And 70% of women who answered this survey said they had. Like, they had not given away details to tell that they were a girl. And only about 6% of guys have said they had done that. So I thought this was funny. So I gave my first half of this talk about 4 weeks ago, and that was more on like the effects of gaming. And if anybody wants, there's a link to the PowerPoint presentation in the reference links that were passed around, or the reference note cards. And then I've also got the reference links for that if you want them. So, but this was actually just a few weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago. I've been playing Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider was recently free on Xbox Live, and so a lot of people have gotten back into the game, and it has a multiplayer option. And so I was just playing the multiplayer, and I was probably in a session with this guy at one point, and I don't talk on mic when I play, just in general, because it's not always that fun. And I don't think it's obvious I'm a girl. I'm definitely not hiding that I'm a girl. Like, I don't really care. So this person's question, and I didn't get it in the first screenshot, but his first question was, are you a girl or a boy? And I answered girl. And then he replied with, well, like, he was like, oh, the game's great. Damn, TR is heaven. And I was like, yeah, TR is a good game, meaning Tomb Raider. And then he started kind of getting funny. He's like, well, you're a good girl, and do you want to kiss? And when I said no, he goes, oh, well, I was just meaning a Hershey's kiss. And then again, he says, can I offer you some kisses? And I was like, no, thanks. We're done here. Like, this isn't why I'm here. I made that very clear. And his response to that was, are you going to block me because I offered you some Hershey's kisses? And I was like, he's playing a game with me. He's clearly playing a game with me, I think. And I just thought it was a funny example that I was presenting on this, and then this happened. I wouldn't say it happens super often to me by any means, but it does happen occasionally that you just got some guy that just won't take no for an answer. I didn't have to block him subsequently. He did leave me alone after I told him to just knock it off. So, but I thought I'd share a personal example because it does happen. So, why does this matter? I guess would be a question we could ask. And in my last talk, Rudaria, she was she brought up, well, do you have any solutions? And I thought, well, I don't really have any solutions. I don't know if it's really my job to provide solutions, but I thought, it is better that we talk about what we can do and why it matters and why this is important than just saying, oh, these bad things are happening. And I also went to a talk at VWBPE that kind of brought this up. And I thought it was a really good thing to say, let's stop worrying just about what's happened. Let's talk about why it matters and what we can do. So gaming is great because gaming does satisfy a need. It satisfies intrinsic needs, which is even greater. And I'm just going to read the quote and I'm going to recommend a book. So the truth is this. In today's society, computer and video games are fulfilling genuine human needs that the real world is currently unable to satisfy. Games are providing rewards that reality is not. They are teaching and inspiring us and engaging us in ways that reality is not. They are bringing us together in ways that reality is not. So that is from Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal, and the whole book is kind of about how gaming and play satisfy needs, but specifically video games satisfy needs, and they create obstacles that you overcome and a chance to become successful, and people return to games because they feel good after gaming, So it does help satisfy some genuine human needs that you can't necessarily satisfy in the real world. Like another game I really love is Dragon Age, and you can romance somebody in that game, you build friendships in that game, and you kill a lot of bad evil monsters in that game. So in that game specifically, like you can learn some social skills, you can learn some team building skills, like things like that from the game, and it satisfies the need, and it gives you a chance to be successful in a way in real life you can't. Like if you fail in real life, you're going to have to suffer real life consequences. If you fail in a game, you reload from your last save point and try again. So, I wanted to talk about, it matters because representation matters. Seeing yourself reflected in media and seeing yourself reflected in various ways matters. Like Whoopi Goldberg said that she felt like she could be an actress because she saw Lieutenant Uhura, Nichelle Nichols, on Star Trek. She saw herself in a character on that show. And I kind of talked about that a little bit in my previous talk, just how not seeing yourself represented in media can affect your self-esteem, and it can affect your belief that you can accomplish things even. So, and the other thing is, I think this is one reason why people get so defensive. People think that if you think critically about media, it means you can't enjoy it. So, I mentioned Tomb Raider, I mentioned Dragon Age. I know Dragon Age has been in Anita Sarkeesian's videos. I don't know about Tomb Raider. But Tomb Raider is incredibly violent. You spend the whole game killing people. Like, the whole game. I can be critical of violence in gaming, and I can still love the crap out of that game, and I do. And there are other games that I played that have been discussed critically that I've enjoyed quite a bit. It doesn't mean, just because it has problematic issues, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't enjoy the game whatsoever. So that's something to realize, that just because you're thinking critically about your media and just because you want more from your media or just because someone else does, that doesn't necessarily mean that they hate gaming and want gaming to completely change. I certainly don't want gaming to completely change. I enjoy gaming. So what can we do? I think we can support games with good representation and good storytelling. That doesn't mean that there aren't mindless games that I still want to play. There probably are. And that's a lot of what I do with, like, when I play Tomb Raider lately, it's just to let myself decompress. It's player versus player. It's pretty violent, but we can also support games with good representation and good storytelling. So, realize that gaming has positive effects. I think the problem with a lot of people outside of gamer culture is that they think, oh, gamers are just people who, sit and play WoW all day and, just sit at their computer desk all day and don't do anything. And there's so much more than that to gaming. And there's so much more to the real world effects and real world, accomplishments that get bolstered by engaging in gaming. So, there was a quote I wanted to read from a psychologist called Zonia, I can't pronounce her last name very well, but Lou Brominski, and she's a leading expert on the intrinsic reward, and that's what games provide. One of the chief reasons for the durability of happiness activities is that they are hard-won. You've devoted time and effort. You've made these practices happen, and you have the ability to make them happen again and again. This sense of capability and responsibility is a powerful boost in and of itself. So basically, when you go through games and you finish a level, like, you have the confidence to know that you can go back and play that level again. And I think that's why people play, I mean, a lot of games have a thing called, like, nightmare mode, where it's incredibly difficult. And people will play those modes. I have a friend who likes to beat it on every single mode. Like, he'll start at the easy, he'll go to the normal, he'll go to the hard, he'll go to the super hard, and he'll go to the hardest. I personally like to stick around normal. So. The other thing is good games are productive. They make our real lives much more rewarding as well as fulfilling. So as humans, we crave satisfying work. We crave work that makes us feel good. We crave the experience of being successful. And we also crave social connection. And a lot of games are providing that. Like, I've met so many people online through either, some people consider this game, some people don't. The games like Second Life, games like just on Xbox Live and parties, like things like that. So it does, create a bonding socially, as well as, that sense of accomplishment, that sense of being successful. The other thing we crave is meaning and the feeling of belonging. And so games provide meaning. Games often provide good stories. And when they don't, like the game that recently came out, Destiny, people were really critical of its kind of really sparse storyline. And people wanted more. So the other thing I'd say is if you see someone engaging in online harassment or gaming harassment, call them out on it. I used to be really shy about that. I used to be really shy about saying, you shouldn't say things like that. You shouldn't. One of the things that bugs me generally is the term, oh, we're going to rape them. When you're gaming, like you're about to play another team and you say, oh, we're going to rape them. I think it really diminishes a very scary thing that happens to men and women alike. So when people say that, I actually call them out on it. I'm like, can we just say something else? And at first I got, oh, it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. As it went on and I said it more and more, I wasn't the only one saying it. Like my good friends, like I have a buddy who is a stereotypical gamer. He's an 18-year-old kid, a teenager. And I met him when he was 17. And he would start to say, you guys shouldn't say that. That's not appropriate. Like, don't say that. Like, he would say it to them. I wouldn't even have to speak before he'd jump on it and say, it's not okay to say that. Like, anyways. Yeah, and I'm with Star. Like, people don't realize what they're saying, and people don't realize that that word is a very heavy word to a lot of people, both men and women alike. So, yeah. So, yeah, if you call them out, they're less likely to do it, or at least maybe they'll think about it the next time they say it. And I've noticed with some of my friends that they'll not only think about it, but then they're calling others out on it. So this is actually the end, and nobody tagged the keyboard, so what would you do? What are your solutions? How do we fix this? How do we make this gamer culture feel safer for everyone, or a better place for everyone? Go for it, DJ.
Yeah, you can pick up your bike.
I was just seeing if I was going to wait for you to finish your point if there was one, and then I would present actually my solution to making gaming safer. But I'm just going to. Did you have a point? Any more on your point?
That was the end of my talk. I wanted to throw it back out to you guys and see what you guys thought. So go for it.
Okay. Well, I think to make gaming safer, I think it needs to be let known that the sexual harassment is not a good thing no matter what. I also think blaming Gamergate for some things is horrible, because Gamergate was a hashtag movement taken over by trolls, pretty much.
Your bike just locked, so you have to close the bike, and Steve took over. Pick up your bike, Steve. Go ahead, pick up the bike, Steve.
Oh, my comment was that with the Anita Sarkeesian thing is that, you know, a lot of, really feel like she was speaking to the wrong audience with the wrong message, that the motivation for a lot of people to write these games comes from the game developers and the business people involved in the games. And so, wait, how much time do we have on this?
Well, see, in the conference room, this was set up to just ask a question. Yeah, and so it wasn't for commenting. However, right this minute, I'm going to change the timer on that back to the 2 minutes so that you guys can have your 2 minute on this board here.
Thank you, Sarah. I should have said that it would be more of a thrown back out.
That, or should I just go and time myself?
Go ahead and go so we don't interrupt the flow, and then I'll fix it, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Well,
so
then I'm going to set my phone clock to 2 minutes. Okay. The solution to fixing game for a safer place and for better story is to stop supporting the games that have basically destroyed the better story, and also make sure that the community knows what they can do to stop this. Stop this kind of... my fiance just behind me just said awareness of the battle. But I think going to what Stephen was saying, I think the problem with Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm somebody that's for strong female gaming characters, but knowing that there's tons of them already, there's actually a video by the channel GameSec that did a whole episode on female-led games. Her problem is exactly what Thunderfoot pointed out, and that is she misrepresents I can't get the word out. Misrepresents her footage for her point. He used a scene that she used from Hitman Absolution from somebody else's gameplay where they just went out and attacked strippers, but not said that the main goal of it was to sneak past them. Because you were actually, and didn't point out the fact that you were deducted points for attacking the strippers. And the Watchdog scene that she also used at one point for one episode, talking about women being used only as objects, was a mission where you went in to free them from the sex ring. It's the misrepresentation of gamers as a misogynistic class that she brings out, and that all games have that in it, which is outright a lie, and I give up my time as now.
So you think that that gamers are not misogynistic? Is that what you said?
Not the majority. It's the certain areas within the game. You go to certain games and you'll have an atmosphere like that. For your CODs and your Halos, you have a lot of kids on there. That shouldn't have the game in the first place, because they're kids. They're young. They're impressionable. They're unfiltered. And you'll get your frat boy type on there. I play it because I was a Call of Duty fan when it was a World War II shooter, and now it's just marginalized crap.
How old are you, DJ, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 31 and gamed all my life. Okay. Now, we go off to another game. Let's say your Payday 2, where it's strategy-based. There's loads of camaraderie. Everyone's joking, and it's not about what sex you are or what. It's about getting the missions done. It's and you go to another game and it's a different atmosphere. Each game presents itself in its own world per se. But the prevailing gamer, the quintessential gamer in the minds of everyone is your COD player, is your Halo player, is the one that goes out there and buys every year and goes in there and screams and trolls and does all the harassment because that's the atmosphere. With the big blockbuster games, we need to bring up the awareness that that's not right. I've been
Clint.
just responding to start.
Go right ahead,
So
Clint.
I apologize for stepping in front of Steven, but I agree that the bro gamer and the hater are straw men in this argument. They are exaggerations of the gamer community as a whole, and they're not indicative of the majority of gamers, but they do represent a problem that we need to deal with. And I agree that there are different levels of these problems in different areas of gaming, but I think we shouldn't accept it regardless of where it is, and that as a society we need to change as gamers, we need to change the idea that it's acceptable to use hate speech, anti-gay speech, anything like that for either taunting or just casual talk. These are important things that we shouldn't allow to be degraded like this. And I'll yield to Steven now.
Yeah, so my comment, I have a lot of things against Anita Sarkeesian too, both in terms of her credibility and her message, in terms of what she says. But I think she does bring up a good issue. But I think her audience has always been kind of misrepresented by her as well. That the people who make the decisions about what sort of tropes you're going to put in games tends to have a lot to do with the game developers and the business people who think, and who really I think the business people involved in it very rarely have a sense of art or class. And so when they're the ones making the decisions, they're going to make it based on money. And so if they have successful games that have that in there and doesn't either seem to change much about the revenue, it's not going to make any difference. And so I think, in terms of your question, Nat, in terms of what to do, I think people need to just have a good awareness of the issue and put their money into saying what is or is not acceptable from a cultural standpoint. And I think that a lot more companies, both indie and big, need to think about taking the risks of developing games to be more female friendly. One thing that I like from Anita Sarkeesian's, she talked about, I think, the development of a Mario Brothers version where they actually decided to scrap putting a female option character in. And so why was that decision made? Probably because they thought, it takes a little bit of extra money, more so than whether they actually had a sexism issue. And so, I think it'd be nice to see people use their money to tell the game executives really what needs to happen. I think nothing will change. I really think nothing will change unless those people get the message. And then I'm done.
Hit the yield button.
The thing to do, and this is going back to Clint's point of taking care of the problem with the broad gamer troll culture, is to troll the trolls. It's like a bully. You confront the bully. This is my strategy of taking care of the troll in a game. I go right after them. I take my ability to convey my voice and come back at them. And they usually shut up, or they continuously cuss, and I continuously going on, as I am now. No, you do not become a bully by confronting the bully. But how is that thinking possible? Usually, you used to be able to confront bullies, but now it's called being a bully. Yeah. Fight fire with fire. But I'm not saying go on. I'm saying just use your intellect to make them go away. It's possible. Stupid people run when you confront them with knowledge.
I go about it. I'm just going to say this real quick. I go about it a little bit differently, even than the screenshot I showed. I don't. Oftentimes, when I get a nasty message or a mean message, I just go, "Oh, you seem really sweet. I hope you have a good day." When they come at me with another message, I go, "Oh, you are just darling. You are lovely. I hope you have a great day." And usually that takes the wind out of their sails. Yeah, I just confront them in a different way. I mean, I think you do have to show them that the behavior is not okay, and like you just don't let it bother you. But that's usually in like messages. So I was going to say with Anita Sarkeesian too, I talked about her in this talk, and I do think that her videos have, like I said, I think her videos absolutely have flaws, and the Hitman flaw is one of them. Do I think that there's some points she's making that are interesting and something we need to think about? Sure. In my last talk, I even talked about how there were a couple indie game developers that were shopping around female-led games to bigger production companies, and they said, you know, if you really want us to develop this game, you got to change your female protagonist to a male protagonist. So there's still a lot of pushback from the industry, I think, to say that they don't really want as many female-led games, and there aren't as many female protagonists. You know, I think it's something like 10 to 15% to like 85% male-led games right now. So, but there are more, and there's better representation. Like I said, Tomb Raider, she's not sexualized, things like that. So I do think that there are games that are becoming better examples and showing us a way it could be. But I think we've still got to wait and see how that comes. And I think we do support those games. Like, I will support Tomb Raider. I will support games that I feel like have really good representation for what I'm seeking, for sure. So, and I will yield to Star. Or I hit Q instead of yield.
Okay, so I'm a 58-year-old female, and I played games when Pac-Man was out. And then I didn't play games anymore, so I'm not what you would call a gamer in the realm that you folks are talking about them, and I know really very little about them. So if I'm clumsy, then it's innocent clumsy. Okay. So the question now is, don't people normally talk smack to each other when they're involved in war kind of games, just to psych out the other player? And then what would be the difference between that kind of psych talk, smack talk, and the kind that becomes abusive? And I'll yield the mic back. Pick it up, Explorer.
Okay, I am. I'm going to pick it up right here. First off, I hear what people say, and pardon me, I have to make a comment to DJ, and it's not personal. But when you say you're going to troll the troll, you're not helping the problem, you're only exasperating the problem. And you're laughing behind the scenes, and doing funny things, and that just shows that's what bullying is. But ignorance to other women by bullying them as well, that doesn't help the problem. It just makes it harder. Do you understand? So, would you do that to your girlfriend? No. Would you? I mean, your fiancé? No. You would not do something like that because you have respect for her. That goes the same in the gaming world, and even here, when we all sit, we all have respect for each other. And some people say, Second Life is a game. So, right? Respect goes a long way, right? Right? Okay. I'm gonna yield it and give it up. I just wanted to make a comment. Go for it, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Explorer. Yeah, so I think that we already realize that when we put people in jail for crimes, they go to criminal college and they come right out better criminals. So if you think that you're going to get them with better trolling techniques. All you're going to do is teach them how to troll better next time. So you're going to have to up your game to get them next time. They're going to up their game, and then it becomes a vicious circle. And if you think that you're not a grand troll in the whole situation, there are people that are in the game that are there trying to play the game while you guys are playing slap and tickle my ego. That's what happens in that situation. I'll yield the mic back.
I think you guys don't understand what I meant by troll. The troll. Well, it's not the combination of. It's not just sitting there and doing the ego trick. What I'm saying is, you have a player list. You can track down said troll. You can sit there and while you're doing that, headshot said troll repeatedly. Target it. Make his experience as painful as they make it for you. It's there. That's a tool there to go after them and find them, and they will back off more often when they go lower on that leaderboard because of the deaths that you give them.